because it's critical. It's not optional. It's not a nice to have, I'll get there someday. If you don't have that, you're dead.
Welcome to the show. Tired of the hype about living the dream? It's time for truth. This is the place for tools, power, and real talk so you can create the life you dream and deserve. Your ultimate life. Subscribe, share, create. You have infinite power.
Hey there, welcome to Your Ultimate Life. This is the next one in a series that I'm doing about leadership and coaching and its relationship to AI. And today I want to talk about space, the space that changes everything. Now, I don't know about you, but here's what I notice about space. Now, I'm a musician, and you know that. I've got 94 songs, I think, right this minute in commercial release, and several others in their various process, whatever the right word is, of recording, and I'm never going to quit that. And I love singing, and I love music of all kinds. And music isn't anything without space. Miles Davis, the famous jazz trumpeter, was just absolutely famous for space. And, some aficionados said, Miles can get more out of a space in a song than most people can get out of a whole bar of notes. Why would that be true? Well, let's talk about what space is. Space is what defines everything else. Like, if I say a word, it doesn't mean anything except because of the space before and afterwards. Because if we talk, if all of the words that we spoke ran together and there were no spaces in between, it wouldn't mean anything. So space gives meaning, it gives definition, it creates the articulation, the meaning essentially for words and music. One of the things I really like about jazz is good use of space. Now, there's favorite kinds of music that everybody has, right? And I'm a jazz aficionado, jazz musician. I write some jazz, play some. I play jazz piano, blah, blah, blah. There is especially in jazz, there's so much importance for that space. Now, there's one kind of music that is jazz that was alive for a period of time called bop, bebop, post-bop. And it was, one of the characteristics of that was it was fast. And it was just characterized by what felt like an almost endless stream of notes. That isn't my favorite kind. There isn't enough space to make me happy. Now, there is enough space so that the lines flow in a particular way, and people that love it will defend it for that reason. But I like music that has more space. Now, the reason I chose this picture for the background today is because of the snow and the pine trees. I want you to think, I don't know if you've ever had the opportunity, you probably have, to be in a pine forest like the one pictured over my left shoulder here. And to be in that pine forest in the wintertime where there's a blanket of snow on the ground. And to just be out in the middle, in between the trees. And maybe it's snowing right there, right then. And there seems to be a stillness, a slowness, a space about that. Snowflakes are falling, and partly because of the forest, partly because of the blanket of snow, partly because snow is already falling, there's a stillness there. And it has a particular characteristic. You can feel it, right? There's a feeling in that stillness. that is so powerful and so meaningful. But today, I want to talk about space that is intentional. Intentional space. To me, this is sacred conversation. Every miracle that I have ever witnessed began in silence. In the last few years, I've had more trips to the hospital than I have had in the rest of my life put together. The first 67 years of my life was quite, healthy for the most part. Well, when I was 62, I had that example where I died. All right, first 62 years. But anyway, a few months ago, maybe 8 or 10 months ago, I went back to the hospital. I was having some symptoms, it doesn't matter what they were, that made me think I better go get this checked out. On a Saturday, I went to the ER, etc. They checked me into the hospital, and I was in there for a couple of days under observation, hooked up to some heart gear and all that jazz. But here's what I noticed. They had a TV in there, and somebody volunteered to bring me some books and all of that. And I even had my phone that could have kept me, quote, busy. And I made a conscious decision that I was simply going to have space. Now, in my space, I'm often in communication with the divine, talking to God, praying, whatever you want to call it. So what I said to myself is, I'm just going to use this day, 24, 36 hours, to do nothing. I'm just going to be with the Lord. So I imagined myself sitting down, kind of like on a park bench, next to the Lord with nothing to say, but just to be there. And that decision was a profound miracle. My mind was empty, my heart was full, and my intuition was banging in the red zone. Ding, 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 ding. Because I had emptied my mind of distractions. I wasn't even worried about the heart monitor and the gear hooked up to me and what it was going to say and was I okay and all of that. None of that. Because at that moment, there was nothing I could do about it. They're checking some things. It's going to be whatever it is. And of course, I prayed and asked for help and healing and all the rest, but not in a frantic way, in a quiet, reverent way. And then I was just sitting with the Lord for the rest of the time, for many hours, many, 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 many hours. And the result of that was miraculous. Here were some specific things. One, my heart was calm. In other words, there was no worry, there was no frustration, there was no fuss, there was nothing. There was a calm certainty of being held. Now, that certainty didn't tell me I was going to be okay, or that things were going to be perfect, or that somehow I was going to miraculously anything. It did not tell me that. What it did tell me was that the Creator was intently and intensely aware of me, my situation, my yearnings, my needs, the prayer that I had said on my behalf, on behalf of my family, Joy, and the others that were living with us that I was taking care of, that Joy and I are taking care of. All of that was communicated in sort of an atmospheric space. I simply knew that. And that allowed all of those things that I could worry about to be gone. And there was an invitation to moment get closer and incrementally closer to the divine. And that was rewarding and rich beyond words. I came away. Now the next, Monday, they let me out of the hospital on Monday. Maybe it was Sunday late afternoon. No, I think it was Monday. Anyway, I was in there for about 36 hours. And I spent that whole time sitting next to the Lord. The space let me feel assured that things were going to be handled. Not necessarily like I wanted them, but whatever it was going to be okay. And that let me not worry about it. The reason I'm talking about this in this series on leadership and coaching is because learning to cultivate, I alluded to this in the last episode, learning to cultivate your ability to sit in silence and purity and love and kindness is priceless. If you don't have that ability, that's something we're going to talk about today, and we're going to talk about how to get it. Because it's critical. It's not optional. It's not a nice to have, I'll get there someday. If you don't have that, you're dead. If you don't have that, your coaching practice is going to die. If you don't have that, your leadership is going to suck. And you're going to be marginal at best. And yeah, those are harsh words, but they're true. And I'm saying them so stridently because I want you to listen. Now, if you're arguing with me, you're full of crap. You're free to do that. And it will not serve you. There's lots of names we give to this. We call it emotional intelligence. One part of that. We call it learning to listen. We call it deep listening. We might call it meditation, which is simply the ability to be still. Meditation has a definition that I use, and there's 3 parts to meditation. And these 3 parts will change the world for you. Part 1 is to slow down enough to be where you are. Now, you might think, Kellan, you're an idiot. I'm already where I am. What do you mean slow down enough to be where I am? I'm here. I'm in this place. I'm not anywhere else. That's not what I mean. When you're there in a place, most of the time you're not even aware of it. You're thinking about where you're going. You're thinking about where you've been physically. I'm driving. I'm on my way to, I came from. Or mentally, you're thinking about what happened a minute ago or what's going to happen. I call that being some when else. You're mentally, spiritually, energetically somewhere else or some when else. Somewhere else means a different place, with someone else in a different building, in a different situation. Some when else means I'm stuck in the past or I'm stuck in the future, focused on what's coming or what's been. That won't help you. It won't serve your intuition, and it won't create that sense of calmness or create your ability to transmit the power of leadership or coaching. But you're leaving all your stuff on the table, and you know what? You're making yourself extremely vulnerable to AI. AI doesn't have the ability to intentionally be present temporally, meaning in time, and physically in space. So the step 1 of meditation, and meditation isn't standing on your head in a corner or sitting cross-legged and uncomfortable in a lotus position or, making little circles and humming little sounds. You can do any of those things, and all of them have a place. And if you want to know something about it, there's 1,000 free YouTube videos. I wrote a 5-volume series on meditation early in my writing career, 2009, and I put out the 2nd edition in 2019 with some additions and some enlargement. There's a zillion different ways. You can walk, you can lay down, you can stand up, you can sit, you can do a lot of things. You can be driving and meditating. Meditating is 3 simple steps, whatever the mechanics you use. If you use a mantra or whatever. Step 1 is to slow down. Slow down enough to be where you are. That's creating the musical space we talked about earlier. Slow down the pace of your thinking. Slow down the pace of your being, even if only for a minute. Remember the old Roadrunner cartoon where Wile E. Coyote, and if you don't know that, I'm sorry, but Wile E. Coyote was a guy that chased the Roadrunner around the desert, looked like Arizona all the time, or parts of New Mexico, Nevada. And the coyote was always trying to catch the Roadrunner, presumably for dinner. And one of the fun things about that was sort of the Roadrunner would be running at an insane speed, and all of a sudden, it would stop like that, right? And one of the times they did that with the coyote is he's chasing the Roadrunner, and the Roadrunner does something, and he's tricked the coyote into running somewhere where he's running off a cliff, right? And the coyote's running like crazy, and all of a sudden, he stops, only where he stops, he's already 10 feet past the end of the cliff. So he stops, which with gravity can't really happen, but in a cartoon, anything, right? So he stops 10 feet there and then looks down and realizes, all right, the reason I gave that example is because you might think mistakenly that your life and your mind is so frantic that you can't stop. Well, just like those cartoons, you can stop. And it doesn't take an hour. You can stop in less than a minute, with practice in less than 30 seconds. So if you set 5 minutes, I recommend starting with minimum 10. So let's talk 10. I don't want to say, well, if you don't have time, do 5. That's baloney. You have 10 minutes. Initially, you're going to slow down slowly. And it may take you all of your 10 minutes to just slow down. Here's how you slow down. Your breathing. Slow your breathing. In order to facilitate that, think about your breathing. Whatever you were thinking about before, just set it aside just for a minute, 10 minutes, right? Set it on the shelf and just focus on your breathing. Feel your lungs expand and the oxygen go in, spread out through your body. And there's all kinds of methods that are taught. And like I said, if you want my teaching, then there's a book called Meditation, The Amazing Journey Within. It's now in its second revised edition that's on Amazon that you can get. And I also have a number of guided meditation songs in my Spotify playlist, so you can look that up. But anyway, you can learn to slow down. And like anything with practice, your ability to slow your thinking down, focus on your breath and just become present, meaning here, as opposed to somewhere and somewhen else, that skill gets better over time. And you'd be surprised. It doesn't take months, just a few days. Like if it took you 10 minutes to even get to, slow down some, tomorrow you'll find that you're in the same place in 9 minutes, and then 8 minutes. And pretty soon you'll get it down in just a few days to where you can, it's just a practice. Slow yourself down. It helps me if I'm physically still, although I love walking meditation, like I would love to be walking in that beautiful pine forest over my left shoulder with that stillness. There's something about doing that and hearing only the crunch of your boots in the snow as you walk, and just like focusing on the sound of that crunch. Any of those methods will help you slow your thinking down. That's step one. Now, whether your thinking is about a different place or a different time, meaning yesterday, tomorrow, next week, the goal line, Christmas, or some disaster that happened in the summertime that trashed your business, or a partner betrayed you, if you're somewhen else, okay, but you can practice. I promise you, you can get better at that. And I'm talking about this at length because you can just brush it off and say, yeah, da, da, da. And it won't do you any good then. You got to get good at this, right? Just like when you first learned to tie your shoe, it took a little bit, took a little while. You had to focus and you had to do it on purpose and you had to do it carefully. And you made mistakes sometimes, frustration, and you had to start over. And then pretty soon you got to where you could just do it. This is the same. And this is way more valuable than learning to tie your shoe. It's way more valuable than any skill you can develop, period. And that's a bold promise, but it's true. It's more valuable than any skill you can learn. Because it connects you to intuition, and it connects you to the divine and the universe and your higher self and God. I call that God. Whatever you call it, it connects, it builds the bridge, it opens the door. It is the portal, because that voice is always small, still small voice. It's called that for a reason, because it is. It's still and it's small. It doesn't shout. Once in a while it does, but that's usually when there's an enormous disaster. My divine intervention in 2007 was a flipping 2x4, and it was noisy and it was loud and blasted my head off. But that's so rare, and it's like in life-saving moments. Wouldn't you rather be able to summon intuition on demand? Of course you would. And this space is what changes everything. So, number one, practice until you can learn to slow down in the first 30 seconds of the 10-minute block. That skill is more important than anything. The second part of meditation is even after you slow down, you've quieted the rush of monkey mind, that kind of thing that we all have, until we learn to set it aside. Then the next tendency of the mind is to, oh, what do I think about? What? Oh, there's that noise over there. Oh, yeah, my foot itches. Oh, wow, I didn't notice my pants were tight on the left knee. Or, oh, there's a hole in that shirt. Or whatever it is, right? Our mind starts grasping for things to think about, because that's the job of the mind, is to think. And lots of times thoughts just come, ding, 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 and they poke their way in. And this process is learning to be the director of all that, right? I've directed plays, I've directed orchestras, and at first, when you first put the people together, everybody's pulling in a different direction, and sometimes people don't listen, and they don't know that you're serious as a director. When you raise your hand, you need absolute silence and that sort of stuff. That's all a learning, and it's learning to work with your mind. And your heart and your gut is three brains, right? Your head has a bunch of neurons and brain, and your heart has a bunch of neurons, and your gut has a bunch of neurons. They all have the ability to pass messages that are like brains. So we're not going to do the three brain stuff right now. But anyway, so the first thing is to slow down enough. The second thing is to be still enough to notice what is there. Still enough. What does that mean? Well, it means that when all of those frantic, what do I think about now, thoughts start crowding, you have to learn to do something with them. And the easiest way to start is using that breath again. Like when you want to think about your bank balance, and when you want to think about, oh, that phone call I forgot to make, or, oh, that message I was going to answer, or stuff that you weren't doing before, but all of a sudden, when you've slowed down, all this other stuff crowds in. The next thing is to slow down enough to be where you are and when you are. The second one is be still enough. Still enough to notice what is there. And I don't mean that, oh, I forgot to pay that bill, oh, I got to make that phone call, all that stuff that starts, oh, yeah, oh, I need to, that isn't the notice what is there. There are other things there. There was this old television series called Kung Fu, and I watched it growing up as a kid, and David Carradine was the star, and he was a guy that had trained in a Shaolin temple, and somehow he found himself in the Old West of the U.S. Of course, every week he had to get in some fight in some old Western town and demonstrate Kung Fu. But that wasn't what I was talking about. When he graduated from the Shaolin monastery and he was walking out the front gate and the old master was saying goodbye, he was there, and you could tell that Carradine was stoked to go out and do whatever it was he was going to go do. And his master was reminding him stuff, and he said, are you still? Are you noticing something? And, oh, yeah. And he said, can you hear the grasshopper at your feet? And, sure enough, there was a grasshopper, and he wasn't. So he wasn't still enough to notice what was there. And so step 2 in effective meditation, or creating the ability to direct your thinking and creating the ability for leadership and coaching, is to be still enough to notice what is there. Now, in a leadership context, that might mean to notice the feelings of someone else. It might mean to notice micro expressions on someone's face that you were completely missing because you weren't slowed down and you weren't still enough to notice. It might be a subtle tone in a voice. It might be extra space between coworkers that normally sit closer together, indicating there might be some friction or problem. It might be one of 100 things that are tiny, subtle cues that give you vast intelligence about the situation, about people. Someone might be sitting with a negative energy and you see, I need to follow up on that. Something's wrong. And you're not going to do it in the team meeting, but you see, I need to make an appointment to have a one-to-one with them and chat. And I need to do it right away because it's feeling important. And so being still enough to notice what is there is the next skill. And that right there is the thing that allows you to hear your intuition, your inspiration, the voice of God, the stillness, the direction. Because not only will you notice things about your team, if you're directing a team, you will notice things about yourself. If you're a coach, you will notice things about your client you were too busy to notice. If you're busy thinking about your next question or the framework or your own insecurities or whether or not you're going to make a good proposal or whether or not they're going to pay you or whether or not you're going to make your money this month, if any of that stuff is in your leadership conversation, and member coaching is leadership, you're dead. You're finished. You're going to blow the conversation, blow the enrollment, and mess up the meeting. Now, caveat, comma, maybe. If you can catch yourself fast enough and get back to listening that matters, and remember to get slow, right this second, slow down, slow down, slow down, slow down. And then be still enough inside. So you've slowed down, but all of the self-consciousness, all of the thinking that you're doing about what to say, what's next, what they think, what's going on. Is this my idea? Is this a good, all of that crap has to stop. And so you can be still enough to notice what is there, because spirit speaks in a still small voice. And so do the cues from your clients or from the people you lead or from your own heart. You're two people. You're the habitual thing, 90, 95, 85, whatever percent it is we do by habit, which means that only a few percent is intentional choice. That needs to go way up for you while you're creating new habits, habits that serve you, habits of listening, habits of love, habits of service, habits of not thinking about yourself at all, habits of being outward focused instead of inward focused. All of those are habits that are developable, is that a word? I don't know. Developable as a leader or a coach. And in that stillness is the magic. So there's a third step, and I'll give it to you in a minute. But step one is slow down enough to be where you are and when you are. The second thing is be still enough inside to notice what is there. The cues from others, the subtle cues from yourself, the discomfort you've been putting off, the conversation you don't want to have. There's several medical studies that prove that when we avoid emotional things that are bothering us, conversations we need to have, things that aren't right in our personal lives or with our companion or our team or whatever, when we put those off, the body is afflicted. The mind realizes you don't want to do that. You don't want to handle it. You don't want to take care of that. And it hurts you. There's a hurt. It's emotional. You don't want to have it, spiritual or emotional. You don't want to take care of it. So I'm going to distract you from that by giving you a physical pain. That is the genesis of psychosomatic illness. Guy wrote a book called Mind Over Back Pain, and he said most of the back pain, upper neck, shoulders, back, the back is actually robust and strong, and we treat it like it's fragile, and it's not. That is just the easiest place for the mind to attack the body, restrict blood flow to certain muscle groups, and so you get pains. And any time you've got a pain, shoulders, neck, back, whatever, lower back, upper legs, that whole column, and they examine it, and we really can't find exactly what that is. You're inventing it. I'm not saying the pain isn't real. That particular doctor called it TMS, tension myositis syndrome, which means the body constricts blood flow to a certain muscle group and it atrophies and it hurts. And so the pain is real, the damage is real, and it is a reaction to our unwillingness or inability to deal with some emotional issue. So to give us a distraction, the body creates a real physical pain, which is the core and genesis of psychosomatic illness. So slow down enough to be where you are. Be still enough to notice what is there. That is the core of leadership and transformation. That is transformational space. That is the place where true change takes place in that stillness, not in instruction. It is the container of safety, of permission, of invitation. If you have suggested something to someone in a leadership context, in talking to yourself, coaching yourself, or with your own coach, or with a potential client, or leading a team, you can say whatever you want. It is in the space, that safe, slow, quiet space after the conversation, that change takes place. When there's time for the pondering and the penetration. Pondering is thinking something through, and penetration is boom. Wow. That insight, that breakthrough, that light bulb moment, whatever you want to call it, that space is where things happen. Now, I've spent a ton of time talking about slowing down enough to be where you are and be still enough to notice what is there. And you can think I talk too long. And if you brush it off, you're blowing it. If you brush it off, you're missing the key point. And even if you think you already know how to do that, start over. There is another layer. There are another 10 layers. So go mine them for your own benefit and learning, for your own growth, for your potential client, your prospect, or your client's growth, for your team's growth. Mine your own ability, because your ability to create that space for a prospect, a client, or a team that you're leading is limited by your ability to create it for yourself. That's like you can't love someone else more than you love yourself. That's a painful truth people argue with. You can go through the motions, and it's not real and isn't backed by the power that real love has. So your ability to create that space, the transformational, empowering space for others, is limited by, it's unlimited in real life, but for you and me, it's limited by our ability to create that for ourselves. That's why self-leadership is the foundation. It is the first place to be. Noticing what is there has a lot to do with listening. Listening to yourself, right? There's surface listening. There's emotional listening. There's energetic listening, which is below that. And even a layer below that is divine listening. That divine listening focuses on a different source, which is, what is the thinking or feeling of the divine to that person or situation? In other words, what would Jesus do? You could say it that way. Or how does the divine or the universe or God look at that person or situation? That's a completely different question. Surface listening often includes judgment. That's what do I think about the situation? Emotional listening focuses on what are the emotions that are present, mostly in them, but also in me. Energetic listening is, what is that person believing about themselves, right? That's deeper than the emotion, often gives rise to the emotion, what a person believes about themselves. And the divine listening is, what does the divine believe is possible in this situation? So only in stillness can you develop your ability to listen. You're a conduit. You're an empty vessel. You're full of divine devotion and love because you create that every morning, right? Your daily creation process, right? Morning ritual, as it were, because you don't leave your morning ritual until you're full of power and focused and you've heard the voice of God, right? And you're clear on your mission. Oh, wait, do you even have a mission? Do you absolutely know where you're going? See, this is why that's so important to start with. Self-leadership is non-negotiable. It's first and it's focused and it limits. Without it, you're limited in your ability to lead others or coach them or do anything else. You're limited in creating that leadership by your own ability to create it for yourself. Now, I said I'd tell you the third element of meditation, which is all the stuff we've just been talking about. Element number one is still slow down enough to be where you are. Number two is be still enough to notice what is there, and that is in you, in them, around them, the energetics, which is below the emotion, we're not even talking about surface stuff, but down to the level of divine love, divine attention. Are you a conduit for the divine's love? Are you busy focused on yourself? Or them even? Get out of both of those and get to the divine. So that's be still enough to notice what is there. And the third thing is trust what comes to you is truth. When you've mastered or are mastering the ability to slow down enough to be where you are, and then to be still enough to notice, to listen and to notice what is there, the emotion, the energetics, which is the opinions, the thinking, the framework from which the emotions are created. And below that, the divine. What does the divine think? What does God think about this situation? How does he view me? How does he view them, my team, my potential, even a prospect? And listening from that place is where the power is. And the last one is trust what comes to you as truth. When you've developed the ability to listen like that, to slow down and to be fully present in that moment and notice what comes to you, trusting that it's truth is essential and it is safe. People say, how do I know the difference between inspiration and my own wants and desires? Am I talking myself into that? You know the difference. Stop pretending you don't. You know the difference. Because if you're slowed down enough to be where you are, and you're still enough to notice what is there, the voice of the divine sounds completely different than the yearning, anxiety-laden, wanting voice of, oh, that's what I want. That voice sounds a little bit needy, a little bit hopeful. The voice of the divine doesn't have any of that. It comes with a certainty, a blessed peace. The implementation might scare the crap out of you. See, if I want something really bad and I think, oh, good, I'm being told I need it. How exciting. That's probably almost always wanting. When the divine intuition comes, it almost always, at least for me, is accompanied with a little bit, holy crap, can I do that? Oh. And the second thing that comes out of my mouth is, oh man, will you help me? Talking to the divine. Because usually the divine view of the situation is more expansive, more powerful, and more beautiful than you and I even got the chops to think about. So you can tell the difference. And when you develop that, the phrase that I'm saying there, trust that what comes to you is truth, is absolutely safe. Because you've done the first two. If you just say every idea that comes to me, oh, must be divine, okay, cool, then yeah, no, it's not safe. Because then you're most likely focused on what I want. We're not talking about that. So slow down enough to be where you are. Be still enough to notice what is there, and trust what comes to you as truth. Now, here's your challenge. You're going to have an opportunity every single day to exercise leadership. At a minimum, you're going to have the opportunity to exercise personal leadership. Are you getting up when you say you will? Do you have a daily creation process that melts the walls and lights you on fire? If you don't, the instructions about how to create a process that will blow your mind is in this book, Living with Purpose and Power. Living with Purpose and Power is the most powerful book on earth about how to create your day. Read it. Follow the instructions or it won't do anything. It's like reading a cookbook and not still being hungry if you don't follow the directions to make a cake. Duh. So ask yourself the questions about self-leadership. Do you have the ability to slow down enough to be where you are? Do you? Do you have that ability? Are you exercising it regularly, every single day? Do you know how to be still enough to notice what is there in your heart, in your mind? And if you don't, no harm, no foul, but it points to the area of development. And when you do that, you will know immediately the inspirations that come from a good place, from a healthy place, from a healing place, from a growth place. So your challenge this week is focus first on your self-leadership. Is your daily preparation process slamming a home run every time? If it's not, fix it. Get a coach. Talk to me. I can help you. This is not, someday I'll develop it. It's essential. Do you want to succeed as a leader, as a coach? Lead yourself, lead your team, or coaching others? You got to have this. And if you don't have it, talk to me. Get that book and get a hold of me, because I can help you do it. I've been working on this now for years, and I have mastered this ability. And it was not easy, but I now know how for myself and others. So first with yourself, and then with each person that you talk to, whether they're someone you know, like your wife or your husband or your kids or your partner, your business partner, whatever, whether it's a complete stranger, whether you're in a coaching call or whether you're in a call with a potential prospect, or whether you're just meeting someone and you don't know what they are. Exercise your sovereign creative ability to create the space that changes everything. It's not unusual for people in their first conversation with me, because I've learned how to do this, to say at the end, I had no idea this was going to happen. Can we please talk again? We're not done. My word, we need, and they're at a loss for words to say that. And it's nothing about me special. It is a reflection of mine and your ability to tap into that divine love and energy and share it, pour it over them. I remind myself every morning, I am love pouring over your soul like warm sunshine, creating miracles in the moment. Like you have that ability. I don't know if you're using it or if you've developed it, but you can. I encourage you with all my heart to exercise that leadership. The space provides the opportunity. The space reveals everything in its plain and true light, and it creates the safety for change, the safety to consider, maybe I can. Wow. That right there is the beginning. And the next step is, I think I can, and then, doing things. Silence is your friend. Stillness is a tool, an excavation, a transformation tool full of love and full of opportunity. So remember, the space that changes everything is yours to create on demand as you exercise leadership of self, of others, coach, or do whatever it is that you are on a mission to do to add good to the world and create your ultimate life.
Never hold back and you'll never ask why. Open your heart and this time around.
Right here, right now. Your opportunity for massive growth is right in front of you. Every episode gives you practical tips and practices that will change everything. If you want to know more, go to KellanFluckigerMedia.com. If you want more free tools, go here, YourUltimateLife.ca. Subscribe. Share.
Stand with your heart in the sky.